What's going on, everyone? Week 13 of the college football season. It is also rivalry week, Iron Bowl week, Alabama versus Auburn. It's going to be an exciting one. We're going to break this thing down with Cole Cubelic, as we always do, in another episode of Head to Head. Okay, roll open. Okay. In 3, 2. First and foremost, a big shout out to our sponsors, Alabama Cattlemen's Association. Beef is what's for dinner. We love y'all. We appreciate you hanging with us all season long. And we know there's a lot of beef in this rivalry game. And Cole Cubelic, you've played in it. You've been a part of it. You've known about it your entire life. What is so meaningful about this Iron Bowl?
I think this particular Iron Bowl, first off, every one of them is meaningful because there are so many people that have so much vested interest in it. But for this one, Carnell Williams, the first former Auburn player that'll be coaching in an Iron Bowl, and only the second interim coach in the history of Auburn football to coach in an Iron Bowl. The other I played for in 1998, Bill Oliver. We played the last Iron Bowl at Legion Field, which was pretty special for me growing up in Birmingham, Alabama. So I think for those reasons, it's pretty special. Auburn's trying to get to become bowl eligible, which is massive for the program. You need those extra practices. It's a reward for the players. I think that's something that should still be celebrated in today's college football. We've gotten way far away from that. So I think there are a lot of things other than just the fact that it's a rival and that's the team that you want to beat most on your schedule.
No doubt about it. And of course, this being a very special Iron Bowl indeed, as you mentioned. I think that with everything that's been happening at Auburn, all the turnover, all the changes, Cadillac Williams now going to be coaching his 4th game as an interim head coach, and just the emotion that has gone into it. Cole, you've been tracking this really because you had his first game there against Mississippi State, and then they were back home obviously against Texas A&M and then Western Kentucky, and now heading into this 4th and final matchup of the regular season under Carnell Williams as the interim head coach. There's just a lot to be said about the way they've played, the way they've fought, the way they've gone into this. And look, we know that this might be a down year for Auburn, a team that's 5-6. Alabama, maybe a down year for them, one would consider, at 9-2 on the season. But we know all of the records go out the window in this matchup. And yes, Auburn has to travel to Bryant-Denny Stadium, which we know gives Alabama the upper hand. But we've seen these matchups be extremely close. And, you know, I'm really looking forward to seeing what this Auburn football team can do against Alabama. Obviously, this Alabama front seven has been dominant. They're elite. The linebackers, they'll get after you. But this has not been a defense from Alabama that we've seen or that we're accustomed to. A lot of mistakes, mental errors, not the dominant defense that we've seen. But this Auburn football team, if they can run the football, get some penetration up front, I think that's going to be huge from them. And I think we saw that against Western Kentucky, where they really changed up the game plan and said, look, we're going to go to the ground. And I'm curious to know from you, as you've sort of seen them kind of get back to that old school type of football, you know, why kind of change things in the first place? Throughout the season, we've seen so much success now as they're running the football, so much more success. What are your thoughts about the offense and how it's kind of evolved as they've tried to put those pieces in place?
Well, I think since Carnell Williams has taken over at head coach, Wilfred and Ike Hilliard have done a good job of putting their best football players in better positions to make plays. You've seen Jarquez Hunter, Tank Bigsby lined up as sort of wing backs and what looks like a little bit of a wing T formation, coming flat across the line of scrimmage and getting the football. You've obviously seen some different design quarterback runs to utilize Robbie Ashford and his legs. So finding different ways to make sure your most explosive players, your best football players, have the opportunity to generate those kind of plays and help generate more points. I think you'll see more of that against Alabama. I think it'll be a game plan that's heavy on misdirection. You saw that against Texas A&M in that front. First time that Auburn had gone really heavy misdirection the entire season. You got to have a lot of that against Alabama. You'll see some unbalanced formations, maybe an offensive lineman on the other side of the offensive line. You'll see extra tight ends on the same side. You're going to get some weird formations because you have to try to get Alabama misaligned and try to steal some yards. You go back to take some of the Dan Mullen recipe from 2 years ago. You go back and take a little bit of what Josh Heupel did earlier this year. Auburn's offense won't look like that formationally, but formations into the boundary, extra personnel on one side of the football, different things like that to try to steal some yards against this group, force them to misalign, and then you have the upper hand in certain areas. One thing Auburn has to avoid is 3rd and long. Bottom line, they have to win on first down. It's absolutely critical in this football game because with Will Anderson and Dallas Turner and company, I mean, you've got a backup tackle starter on the right side. Auburn cannot live in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 10. They're not going to be able to withstand what Alabama brings from a pass rush perspective, especially with how Byron Young's been playing of late. Zaheem Otis playing good football inside. They just can't do that. And they don't have the receivers to separate enough in man coverage, I think, to be able to live like that anyway. So there are some advantages for Auburn in this game. I think most of them are on the other side of the football. But Auburn offensively, winning first down, huge. Misdirection, huge. Formations, huge in this game if you're going to try to find any advantage against a pretty good Alabama defense.
Yeah, and talking about the defensive side of the football for Auburn, I think that's one key area. I covered Alabama this past week, and one of the things that, Nick Saban really pointed to about the offense for Alabama, it's been quite different. Bryce Young, obviously not putting up the same kind of numbers, but remember, he had to sit out a week. He was having to deal with the shoulder injury, and then a lot of it had to do with being in practice and not being able to practice with those receivers, being able to develop and build that chemistry with those receivers. So Alabama really hasn't had one of those go-to guys, and I think this is where this Auburn defense can come in and really try to, put some pressure on Bryce Young, put some pressure on those guys. And obviously it's going to be important to stop the run game. I know that Jahmyr Gibbs was obviously banged up. He's been dealing with an ankle injury. He didn't play last week because they wanted to kind of rest him for this upcoming game. But Jace McClellan has stepped in and really been able to get some yards on the ground. And so, I think defensively, this Auburn team has started to show, ignite some of that spark. And one thing I really loved, and Cole, you probably, heard about this as well, is that locker room talk that happened at halftime where really Carnell Williams just stepped aside and said, look, I'm going to let I'm going to let Derek Hall and some of our leaders on defense step up and kind of have a conversation with the team because they go into the halftime against Western Kentucky tied up. What's going on here, And I think just hearing from the seniors and how they were able to come back and really use that energy and that spark to go on and shut out Western Kentucky in the second half, allow them, keep them from getting in the end zone. And I think that speaks volumes to sort of the direction of this football team and the type of maybe heart that they're playing with in addition to, creating some advantages for themselves.
I don't think there's any doubt. And you've seen the leadership be very different, maybe more vocal here in the last couple of weeks for this Auburn football team. Derek Hall, a big part of that. Owen Papo, John Samuel Shanker, those guys have really taken the extra step to be able to help with that portion of the team. And defensively, I think there are some advantages. First off, Austin Peay showed some pressures that Alabama just didn't pick up. They missed them. I think a couple were on the quarterback. One may have been on a running back, 1-2 on the offensive line. They got clean hits. They got free runners on Bryce Young. That can't happen, especially when you're talking about taking a step up to some of the Auburn defenders. That just can't take place. Now, Alabama was down a couple of bodies in that game. Be interested to see what happens at left tackle as well with an injury to Tyler Steen. But I think with what Colby Wooden has done, with what Derek Hall has done, some of the different pressures that Jeff Schmedding has added over the last couple of weeks, and Auburn showed they can be pretty good in coverage last week as well. That's a really good passing team in Western Kentucky that they were able to offset some things. They still got their yards, but they're going to. That's just how they operate. I think they have a chance to pose some matchup issues for Alabama when Auburn's defense is on the field. This is not a group of receivers that separates very well. It's not an offensive line that has been dominant in any real fashion any time or point in this season. They just have a couple of skill guys that when they do get the football, they can hurt you and they can break you down. Unfortunately for Alabama's opposition, the main one is the one that touches the football on almost every play. It's their quarterback. Bryce Young's that good. And he can move around and do things. He can obviously distribute the football in different ways, whether it's down the field, whether it's check downs. He understands, as well as any quarterback in the nation, how to manage his team, manage his offense. And I don't mean that in a negative term in any shape, form, or fashion. He knows where to get it, when to get it out, and how to get it out. And so that part has to be neutralized. You cannot allow him to extend plays. You can't allow him to have 8, 10, 12 seconds in the pocket like he did last week. But I think Auburn has enough pass rush might to be able to offset that.
Yeah, I think those are all really valid points. All right, so as we get into predictions, one thing I do want to mention that I thought was interesting, obviously a win for Auburn would make them, in essence, bowl eligible with 6 wins on the season. But rumor on the street is there's a potential that Auburn could still get a bowl bid with the way things have shaken out this year with different teams and just not enough teams hitting that 6-game win mark to be able to get a bowl bid. And so I think it's interesting to see that regardless of how things shake out with this game, it is still possible that Auburn gets to a bowl game, which would obviously, I think, mean a lot for this team and a lot for the guys playing and a lot for really just the Auburn family. And I think that, speaks volumes. But I think this game is going to come down to a lot of heart. Yes, they go on the road. Bryant-Denny Stadium, we know it's a tough place to play. It's never easy. Playing on the road, we saw what happened last year, against an Auburn team that obviously was in somewhat of a slump as well, kind of holding them there into overtime. So I don't expect anything less. I think there will be some drama. I think there will be some theatrics. I think they will play with heart. I think they will be chippy. However, I do think Alabama will still pull this one out, being at home, keeping their key weapons in place. I got Alabama winning this one 37-27.
I agree with you on the competitive nature of this game. I think there will be plays made on both sides, big plays made on both sides. You go back and look at that Alabama defense. They've allowed over 180 yards rushing in 2 of their last 3 games. Auburn should be able to find some things on the ground. This will come down to Robbie Ashford having to make some plays through the air. I don't think he has to throw the ball 45 times in this game and throw for 480 for Auburn to have a chance to win or win this game. I just think he has to go out and when those plays present themselves, when he has an open receiver down the seam, when he has an outside shot play, to find a way to connect and not miss on many of those, because those opportunities won't be plentiful in this game. But I do think he'll have those at certain points in time. And defensively, like I said, I think Auburn can cause problems. I really do. If they can neutralize how much Bryce Young moves around and how much time he has in the pocket, I think all of a sudden you can break certain things down. The motivation seems to lie with Auburn right now. This is not a spot we've seen Alabama in very often, playing in this game and not really having a great chance to end up in the college football playoff. Now, there are some weird, wacky scenarios which Alabama could find their way in, but I think the motivation lies with Auburn. I think this is a special game. I think there are going to be some things that come out as the game approaches kickoff that's going to make the guys want to go win this game for Carnell Williams. And I think Auburn finds a miracle. I think Auburn just figures this thing out. I'm going to go 24-21. Auburn kicks a field goal late and finds a way to knock off Alabama in Tuscaloosa.
Love it, Cole. Appreciate you. Thanks for being with us all season. And, hey, happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
Happy Thanksgiving, Lauren.
Brought to you by Alabama Beef Farmers and Ranchers.